When you think of the most terrifying, spine-tingling, heart-stopping movie-going experiences of fear, I bet iconic scenes like Samara crawling through the TV in The Ring, Jack breaking down the door in The Shining, or even Scooby-Doo dressed as an old lady spring to mind. But I'm willing to bet that over the course of this video, another film will be added to that list. Not one that terrifies you to your core and tops the scare list, but one that becomes associated with fear. A film that transcends the superficial jump scare or even the genuinely terrifying, and instead explores something even more potent, the fundamental nature of fear. A journey packaged in the form of a children's animated classic we all know and love, Monsters Inc. Now I know what you're thinking, how could this tiny green bowling ball be anything other than harmless? But what Monsters Inc. does so flawlessly is present us with a world powered by fear, and in doing so strips bare the sheer complexity of fear at every level. And through the lens of Monstertropolis, we get to explore each level in detail, from harnessing fear as an energy source and weaponising it as a tool for oppression, all the way to Boo, a 3-year-old girl being described as a laser beam firing, telekinetic killing machine.
I tried to run from it, but it picked me up with its mind powers and shook me like a doll. It's true! I saw the whole thing!
Whilst Monsters Inc. will never make your top 10 horror movie list, in this episode we'll dive into why Monsters Inc. might just make the cut for one of the most profound journeys into the true nature of fear in the entire cinematic universe. Not only is Monstertropolis literally powered by the screams of children, its citizens are also terrified of the very children they extract them from. Here we see two of the most potent utilisations of fear. On the one hand, as the Monster Inc. company states, they match every child with their ideal monster to produce superior screams that are refined into clean and dependable energy. They utilise the fear of children to refine it into a power source for the entire city. They harness fear as an energy source, highlighting how within the fundamental nature of fear is the opportunity to transfer this spine-tingling, gut-wrenching emotion into an energy source upon which we can thrive upon. On the other hand, the citizens of Monstertropolis are paralysed by the fear of children, believing that there's nothing more toxic or deadly than a human child, just a touch could kill you. This belief that children are a deadly phenomenon to the monsters is essential for maintaining the power source of the city. The children are afraid of the monsters which produces screams, whilst the monsters are afraid of the children and so never actually get to face their fears and realise the children's true nature. Once we're introduced to the world of Monstertropolis, the plot kicks off when Sully covers for Mike with the leftover paperwork and finds a scare door still active in the scaring room. As Sully investigates, Boo grabs his tail and Sully is terrified. All he can think to do is bag her up and take her straight to Mike, which of course goes terribly wrong as she escapes the bag and in turn terrifies the entire restaurant. This leads to the Child Detection Agency turning up to decontaminate the entire area. Here people give wildly inaccurate accounts to news reporters of how the child was blowing things up with laser eyes and telekinesis, when of course in reality the only mayhem caused was the reaction to Boo in the first place. But the fact that the citizens were so compelled to believe that Boo did all this highlights our tendency to wildly inflate the threat and things we're scared of. The power of fear plays on this psychological imbalance of perceiving the thing we fear as exponentially more dangerous than it actually is. The epitome of this is highlighted when in their apartment, Sully, a huge towering monster, dresses up as a Viking in fear of Boo. The depiction of a child proliferated by Monsters Inc. is so life-threatening that Sully feels compelled to don a helmet and shield in order to even dare be in the same room as Boo. This is the power of fear, the result of your mind perceiving something as so mind-meltingly, spine-tinglingly, eye-wateringly terrifying that it has mutated and manifested into a dragon you're too frightened to even confront. The thing you fear is beyond comprehension, a cognitive behemoth manifested from a psychological imbalance, like Boo being a laser beam firing telekinetic monster. As they try to subdue this cognitive behemoth that is Boo, Mike falls over and gets stuck in a bin, which Boo finds hilarious. So hilarious in fact that as she laughs she blows the power circuits of the building. Strangely enough, the same thing happens when she cries after Mike takes her teddy away. Her emotions exude a power that interferes with the power of the units and light bulbs in the building around her. Thematically, this is our first hint that fear may not be the only source of emotion we can draw power from. And as we see laughter blow the circuits powered by fear, we get a little insight into the true potential strength of laughter and realise that fear may not be the most powerful energy source Monstertropolis could use. Once Boo has blown the circuits and Sully helps Mike out of the bin, Mike is still incredulous at the situation and turns to Boo saying, "That thing is a killing machine," as she dances innocently. Here we see how Mike refers to Boo as a thing, not as the child she is, which is another reference to confronting your fears and facing what the fear actually is versus overinflating its danger and giving the feared thing more power. In the first instance, if you strip back the layers of armour you attribute to the thing by actually facing what it is you actually fear, you may come to realise it can be as innocent as harmless as a dancing 3-year-old Boo. This moment completely ridicules Mike's fear of Boo, an innocently dancing 3-year-old killer machine. That is the power you give something when you refuse to bring its true existence into conscious reality. Finally, Sully coaxes Boo into his bedroom with a trail of Cheerios, and Sully agrees to sit in front of the closet for Boo so that no monsters can get out. It's here that Sully is finally able to pierce this layer of armour he has for so long laid upon children, that they are terrifying, deadly, toxic killing machines. He sees Boo for what she really is, a harmless, adorable child. This could be a reference to the method in which we overcome fear, with Mike seeing Boo at her most harmless being akin to exposure therapy, whereby we confront the fear at stages, often beginning by imagining the thing that we feared is in the room. For a fear of spiders, for example, first confronting it in our mind, and then placing a realistic toy spider in the room, then perhaps the shed of one, etc. Same with a patient with claustrophobia. Start by them imagining getting into a lift and gradually increase exposure to the feared stimuli. Just like with Sully, this gradual exposure can strip away the layers of armour you have given this fear, as you've built this thing up to be much more dangerous than it actually is. As Sully now stares at Boo, the realisation hits, and after this point we see Sully treat Boo completely differently, with love and affection, even at one point in the story being mistaken as Boo's father. This is another interesting insight, because we see how fear's power relies on us giving it said power. We see how powerless fear is once we've overcome it, similarly to why we shred the doors of children that aren't scared. This explains the power crisis they're having in Monstertropolis, as once fear is overcome it is powerless. This is in complete contrast to emotions like sadness or laughter, in which there is no ultimate overcoming. Sadness and laughter are emotions never meant to be overcome, but rather to be integrated into everyday lives. Fear, on the other hand, was always meant to be overcome in a perpetual cycle of confrontation and overcoming. The boon that we gain from overcoming fear is absorbing its power and growing from its experience. We don't necessarily grow from sadness, but rather repair. We don't grow from laughter as so much, but rather it revitalises us. Fear, however, when overcome, moulds us as human beings. The next day, Mike suggests that they return Boo back to her door and everything will go back to normal. This could be in contrast to Sully, who has faced and overcome his fear, whilst Mike still refuses and wishes instead to repress the knowledge of Boo and shove her back into the unknown, where he won't have to deal with her. Even though by doing this to the things we fear, they end up actually growing roots within us and controlling us from within the shadows. It's the difference between facing the dragon head on and pretending it doesn't exist, leaving it to grow in strength upon the mountain until one day it flies down and decimates your village. Eventually your village will end up nothing but rubble and the dragon will consume you. Begrudgingly, Sully agrees with Mike, and they finally make a deal with Randall, who is Boo's monster, to take her to her own door, where Sully refuses to let her go, and as Mike bursts into her room, Randall snatches him thinking it's Boo and takes Mike down into a secret part of the factory, where he reveals his invention of the scream extractor, designed to bypass the need for a scare and suck the screams directly out of you. As they escape Randall's clutches, they find Waternoose to reveal Randall's plan. But before Sully can say a word, he's forced into the scare simulator to do a demonstration scare for the students. But without realising it, he does so as Boo is standing right in front of him, and she's terrified of his scare. Sully suddenly forgets all about Randall's plan and tries to calm Boo down, saying don't be scared, that wasn't real. But as Sully flicks between the still image of Boo's terrified face and the still of his scare, he realises that it was real, very real. This gives us valuable insight into the subjectivity of fear, how jumping out of a plane 30,000 feet in the air can be exhilarating for one person and petrifying for another, how one person may perceive a snake as a slimy, scaly, deadly reptile and another as a cute little megaworm. Sully doesn't believe that his scare was real because he knows that it was just an act, something that he turns on and off like a switch. He fully understands it, whereas Boo does not. All Boo sees is the terrifying image of this monster's sharp teeth, wild eyes and devilish horns. As Sully is trying to console Boo, Mike finally explains Randall's plans to Waternoose, who of course knew all along, and banishes Mike and Sully through their own door, into the vast expanse of the Himalayan mountains. It's here that Mike and Sully clash, with Mike resentful of Sully for dragging him into this situation, while Sully is simply devastated for Boo. Even scaring has no meaning to him now. Sully has finally pierced the fundamental nature of fear, that it's not the perpetual existence and manifestation of fear that defines us, but the overcoming that makes us who we are. Sully has overcome his fear of human children, whilst also understanding what it is he's been inflicting upon them all these years. He has for years now perceived the process of scaring as a means of power in his city, his life, when in reality he has been incessantly torturing these kids for years. What Sully realises he needs to do now is help Boo overcome her fears, not exacerbate them. And with that, Sully heads down to the village and returns to Monstertropolis, through a scare door to confront Waternoose for one final time. As he saves Boo from the scare extractor, Mike swoops in to save them both from Randall, and a tussle with Randall takes them all out into the storage vault of the scare doors, where we get to witness the vast expanse of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of scare doors, each one a vessel to the root fear of every child. It's once again Boo's laugh that powers the doors up and allows them to door hop until Randall finally has Sully clutching the base of a door, hanging above a 1,000-foot drop. It's here that Boo finally overcomes her fear of Randall and attacks him to save Sully. Boo collects the courage to slay the monster in the closet, the dragon of the depths. We watch as a little child conjures the strength and bravery to stand up to the very monster that has plagued her nights with terror for all her life. If this little girl has the courage and bravery required to face our fears, don't we all? Truly deep down. Sully then exclaims, "She's not scared of you anymore," to Randall, as Boo growls and roars at him, and together they banish him out of his own door. Mike then lures the CDA agents away from Sully as he leads Waternoose to what he believes is Boo's room. Waternoose then confesses, "Times have changed, scaring isn't enough anymore. I'll kidnap 1,000 children before I let this company die." Little does Waternoose know, Sully has lured him into the scare simulator and his confession is now caught on camera. Waternoose is then escorted away as he screams to Sully, "I hope you're happy, Sullivan. You destroyed this company. Monsters Inc. is dead. Where will everyone get their screams from now? The energy crisis will only get worse, because of you." However, as we soon learn, this is only really the beginning of Monsters Inc. Sully is then informed that he can send Boo back, but he must shred the door afterwards. As Sully takes Boo to her room, she nods over to the closet with a smile, no longer scared of it. After their goodbye, Sully leaves through the closet door, and Boo follows quickly to open it back up and scare him, only to find he's gone. The door has been shredded, and with it, Sully's connection to Boo. Boo is no longer afraid of the dark unknown within the closet. Back in Monstertropolis, we find a completely different Monsters Inc. facility, with the aesthetics of the facility covered in colourful wallpaper and balloons. We watch as Mike enters a child's door, but this time seeks to extract laughter from them. As Sully says, laughter is 10 times more powerful than screams. The energy crisis is averted. Counter to Waternoose's own fears, Monstertropolis is thriving greater than ever. This is the epitome of the theme, as fear can only ever be a temporary energy source. We can be spurred into action by fear, forced to overcome, but we can never truly rely on fear and fear alone to fuel us, because if we do, we'll end up being consumed by it, just as Waternoose was. The city could never survive powered on fear, even with the scream extractor, as eventually they'd have exhausted children to extract screams from. Fear is an essential facet of human nature, one that we must confront and overcome in order to grow in life. However, it is not an energy source we can rely on to perpetually exist in our lives. The concept of us living in fear is a reality of forever being afraid. What Monsters Inc. teaches us is that we must seek to overcome fear. Fear is a vital component of human nature, but it is one that we must be triumphed. Perhaps the theme intended to go one step further. As we saw with sadness, both negative emotions were capable of producing power, but laughter came out as the strongest of them all. Perhaps the theme intended to impart wisdom that whilst unpleasant emotions like fear and sadness inevitably exist, they should not dictate our lives. We cannot live forever in perpetual states of sadness or fear, as if we did, we as human beings would eventually experience the very same energy crisis as Monstertropolis did. And the rolling blackouts would be the hours upon hours a day we'd spend submerged in states of emotional turmoil. In the final sequence of the film, Sully reveals at the back of his clipboard a picture Boo drew of the pair of them. Mike then reveals that he has repaired Boo's door, and that Sully has the final piece to slot into it and reactivate the door. Monsters Inc. ends as Sully opens her door and they are reunited once more. This final touching scene is an important one, as it imparts one final insight into the nature of fear, that our connection with fear is never truly severed. Remnants will always remain, and we must acknowledge that fear may not be a mountain to be scaled, but rather a storm to endure that may one day always return. Just picture a fear of public speaking. We've all experienced this in one form or another. This inherent fear of social rejection and embarrassment can never be truly squashed. Not really. But people can learn to deal with these fearful emotions, say by channeling them into nervous energy. The threat of fear may never be truly extinguished. Just as Sully and Boo are reunited, so too may the storm always return. To revisit Epictetus's quote, "To overcome the oppressive, soul-draining and paralysing nature of fear, we must come to understand what it is we fear in the first place." Monsters Inc. goes one step beyond helping us understand what it is that we fear. It provides valuable insight into the nature of fear itself. Through being immersed in a world powered by fear and following the journey of two unlikely heroes within it, we not only learn the true power of fear, but we watch as characters who are at first completely at the mercy of fear in their lives gradually learn to navigate the world in order to overcome it. And it's only by finally overcoming their fears that Mike and Sully finally learn that they can't spend their entire lives in the shadow of fear, that they can't live in a perpetual state of fear, and so instead harness a more sustainable energy source in their lives, in laughter. The more we understand fear, the more we come to realise that the only true power fear has over us is our own capacity to confront it in the first place. Whether it's the courage to apply for that job, or speak in front of hundreds of people. The only thing standing in our way of our own personal growth and development is crossing that terrifying bridge between us. We all know that across the bridge on the other side is a better, more accomplished version of ourselves, but it's navigating that rickety bridge and facing our fear that is so difficult to do. But perhaps we can all reach a point in our lives where that feeling of accomplishment, after overcoming our fear, trumps the hesitation in the first place. Or we become so addicted to facing and overcoming our fears that we seek them out and slay the dragons one by one. Because if Boo has what it takes to face the monster that has for so long haunted her every night, don't we all? If you like this video and want to see more like this, consider giving us a like and subscribing. Thanks for watching.